podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
This is the FPL Draft Zone, your fantasy team's best signing of the season.
Arsenal annihilate West Ham. Is Saka the new Salah? Two unlikely heroes grab hat-tricks, but are they worth wavering this week? And Manchester United spank Everton. So who are their most valuable assets going forward? Hello and welcome to the FPL Draft Zone, a podcast all about, yes you guessed it, Draft FPL. I'm Dom Crofts, and yes, the final whistle has blown on another game week. Game week 13 is done and dusted, and we're going to be looking back at all the action, flagging a few lessons we've learned along the way. And of course, we're going to be talking waivers ahead of game week 14, which starts on Tuesday in just 2 days' time. And that means you have less than 24 hours to set your waivers at the time of recording. So let's not mess about any longer. Let's talk game week 13. And it all began on Friday night with a game between Brighton and Southampton at the Amex. And that one finished Brighton 1, Southampton 1. Brighton went into this one unbeaten in their last 5 games against the Saints. And they did extend that record, but it wasn't the result they wanted. Matoma made it 19 points in 2 game weeks with a 10-point return. Adam Armstrong got his third return in 4 matches after his assist set up Flynn Downs. In the 3 o'clock kickoffs on Saturday, Brentford beat Leicester 4-1. Leicester hadn't lost to Brentford in their previous 6 meetings, and they took the lead in this one as well through Buonanotte, but a Kevin Schade hat-trick turned the game in favour of the Bees, with Johan Wissa also on target for Thomas Frank's side. Crystal Palace, well, they drew 1-1 with Newcastle United. Mark Gahey scored an own goal and got an assist in this one. He set up Munoz's last-minute equaliser. Anthony Gordon also returned for the Toon. Nottingham Forest edged past Ipswich 1-0 at the City Ground thanks to that man Chris Wood. And in the Gary O'Neill derby, Wolves were well beaten by Bournemouth, with Justin Kluivert scoring a hat-trick for Andoni Iraola's side. In the early evening kickoff, Arsenal cruised past West Ham 5-2, Saka and Trossard returning big for their owners. And then on Sunday, Chelsea eased past Aston Villa with Enzo Fernandez again on target, along with Nico Jackson and Cole Palmer in a 3-0 win. Manchester United smashed Everton with Amad Diallo, Marcus Rashford and Joshua Zirkzee all returning double-figure hauls. Spurs drew 1-1 with Fulham, with Brennan Johnson on target again, and Kearney equalising for Marco Silva's side before getting himself sent off. And then in the final game of the weekend, it was the top 2 at Anfield. It was Liverpool, it was Manchester City, and Liverpool won quite easily. 2-0. Mo Salah with another goal and another assist. So that's what happened in game week 13, and as always, those games have thrown up, literally vomited up, some good and some bad. So let's talk winners and losers.
The FPL Draft Zone, winners and losers.
First up are the winners, and we have 2 hat-trick heroes to celebrate this week. First up, Kevin Schade, who was the star of the show in Brentford's win over Leicester. He's long been talked about as a potential draft option this season, but he's not quite managed to nail down a place in that Brentford first team. This was his first start in the Premier League since game week 8, but he certainly made up for lost time. He got 3 goals and an assist to earn owners 23 points and almost certainly a victory in their draft league. Competition for places in that Brentford front line is stronger than ever now, but you would assume that Schade will be rewarded with another start in their next game, which is away at Aston Villa. And Justin Kluivert also grabbed a hat-trick as Bournemouth won 4-2 against Wolves at Molineux, and bizarrely all 3 of his goals were from the penalty spot. He ended the game week with 20 points. Marcus Rashford also gets his flowers from us this week. He scored twice in Manchester United's win over Everton. Before Ruben Amorim took over, Rashford had managed to score just 4 goals in 18 appearances this season. Now he has 3 goals in 3 games under the Portuguese. So if you have patiently held on to Rashford, you may now be feeling a little more hopeful that he can still return to his best. Amad Diallo and Joshua Zirkzee, by the way, also deserve big shout-outs for their performances in the United attack. A few players we recommended last week who also returned this week: Purvis Estupinan of Brighton and Nathan Collins of Brentford. We were hoping for clean sheets from both of them. In the end, they did not get clean sheets, but they did still return. Estupinan picked up 2 bonus points to earn owners of him 4 points overall. He finished with an XGI of 0.38 as well, which bodes very well for the future with Brighton's rather kind fixture list. And Collins got an assist and ended with 5 points, and he's quietly doing owners proud in the offensive department. He's now got 1 goal and 4 assists this season from his opening 13 games, which is pretty impressive for a centre-back. We also said it would be worth getting in Aina or Murillo for this week if anyone had dropped them, and Nottingham Forest did indeed keep a clean sheet in their win over Ipswich, with both those players ending up in the bonus points. Marcus Tavernier was another recommendation from us, and even though his teammate Justin Cliver was the pick of the Bournemouth bunch, he did still end up with an assist and 5 points. And Enzo Fernandez was someone we said could become a regular starter in that Chelsea side. We flagged his pretty decent scoring record earlier in his career with River Plate, and he got another goal in Chelsea's win over Aston Villa to make it 3 returns in 3 games for the World Cup winner. As for this week's losers, Unai Emery is on a bit of a bad run with Aston Villa, isn't he? His side have now gone 8 matches without a win, and some of those games have not exactly been top of the table clashes. In that period, they have lost to the likes of Club Brugge and Crystal Palace, and only managed draws with Palace in the league and Bournemouth as well. They have got 2 home games coming up against Brentford and Southampton, but they do look like a shadow of their former selves right now, and it's quite hard to own any of their players with any confidence at this moment. And Newcastle attackers are also in the loser pile this week. Alexander Isak owners saw their star man go off injured after just 22 minutes. Harvey Barnes and Callum Wilson both failed to make an impact after they came off the bench. And even though Anthony Gordon walked away with an assist, Newcastle actually failed to register a shot on target in their game against Crystal Palace. They scored courtesy of an own goal. They ended the game with an XG of just 0.02, which is basically an XG of nothing. And it wasn't much better in front of goal at home to West Ham last Monday, where they had 18 shots on goal, but only 2 of them were on target. Newcastle are not in a good place right now, and next up for them, it's Liverpool. So we've talked winners, we've talked losers, but you know what we haven't talked about? We have not talked about fantasy football heroes. Not just the good, but the great. Not just the solid, but the spectacular. It's time to reveal this week's fantasy hero of the week.
Hero of the Week.
And this week's Hero of the Week is, of course, Bukayo Saka, who scored his 5th goal of the season and registered a hat-trick of assists in Arsenal's win over West Ham. He finished the game week with 18 points. He now has 11 assists for the season. He has 16 attacking returns in just 13 game weeks. He has 4 double-digit returns for the season, including 2 in as many weeks. And he has finished in the bonus points 8 times already this season, in just 13 game weeks. In a season where Mo Salah is breaking new ground even for him, Saka is the only man who seems set to keep pace with him. He is currently just 2 points off 100 points for the campaign. He is looking like a far more valuable draft asset right now than a certain Erling Haaland. In fact, I think it's fair to say that it's between him and Salah for the most valuable player in draft right now. He is, of course, on course to obliterate the Premier League record for most assists if he keeps up this form, and based on what we have seen this weekend, it looks like it's going to be one of Salah or Saka who is going to be lifting the Premier League title in May. He is fun to watch. He seems like a lovely guy. He is playing at an incredibly high level right now, and if you own him, he is helping you to win big game week after game week after game week after ruddy game week. Bukayo Saka, we salute you. You are this week's fantasy hero of the week.
Hero of the Week.
Right, Game Week 13 is over and Game Week 14 starts on Tuesday, so there is next to no time to sort your side out ahead of that one. And for those managers who aren't so engaged in your league, this could be the week where you take advantage of their lack of forward planning and you leave them in the dust. We will talk waivers in just a moment, but first let's take a look at the games we have to look forward to in midweek, and it all starts on Tuesday night with two games. At Portman Road, it is a relegation six-pointer between Ipswich Town and Crystal Palace. It is their first ever meeting in the Premier League. The last time the two sides met in any competition was way back in 2017 in the EFL Cup when Palace won 2-1. Their last meeting at Portman Road was back in 2013 when Ipswich won 3-0 and journeyman left-back Aaron Cresswell got on the score sheet. The other game on Tuesday is another big game down at the bottom. It is Leicester City against West Ham United at the King Power. Leicester are unbeaten in their last 3 games against the Hammers, and they did the double over them the last time they met in the Premier League. They won 2-1 at the King Power and 2-0 in East London. However, of the players who scored those 4 goals for the Foxes, only Wout Faes remains at the club. On Wednesday, it's Everton against Wolves at Goodison Park, and considering these two teams have both struggled for a good few seasons now, it is a bit of a surprise to me at least that Wolves have been utterly dominant in this fixture over the past few seasons. They're unbeaten in their last 6 matches against Everton, dating back to November 2021, and of those 6 games, Wolves have won 5 of them. They also did the double over Everton last season. They won 1-0 at Goodison Park and 3-0 at Molineux, with Cunha and Craig Dawson among the scorers for Gary O'Neill's side. It's Manchester City against Nottingham Forest at the Etihad. City have won 3 of the last 4 meetings between these two teams, drawing the other, and they have kept clean sheets in 3 of those 4 games. And if you're lucky enough to have part footballer, part Terminator Erling Haaland in your squad, you will be pleased to hear that he scored home and away against Forest last season. It's Newcastle taking on the might of Liverpool at St James's Park, and Liverpool actually have an absolutely outrageous record against Newcastle. They have not lost home or away to them since 2015, nearly 10 years ago. It's a run that spans 15 matches. They have won the last 6 games in a row, and they have won 11 of those 15 games, drawing the other 4. Last season, Darwin Núñez was the hero. He scored twice at St James's Park in a 2-1 win that also saw Virgil van Dijk sent off, and I expect more of the same this midweek, especially with the status of Alexander Isak's injury unknown. Southampton entertained Chelsea at St Mary's, and rather surprisingly, Chelsea's record against the Saints is not great in recent times. Southampton did the double over them the last time they met in the Premier League, with Adam Armstrong among the scorers in a 2-1 win on the South Coast, and Chelsea have only won 2 of their last 8 matches against the Saints, so maybe this will be the week Russell Martin's side get a victory. It's Arsenal against Manchester United at the Emirates. Arsenal have won 4 of the past 5 meetings between these two, and they did the double over United last year, winning 1-0 at Old Trafford and 3-1 at the Emirates. Odegaard, Jesus and Rice got the goals in North London last time out. Rashford scored for the visitors. Aston Villa entertained Brentford at Villa Park. They are unbeaten in their last 4 meetings against the Bees. Last season it finished 3-3 at Villa Park, with Ollie Watkins scoring twice for Unai Emery's side, and Wissa and Mbumo among the scorers for Brentford. And then on Thursday it is Fulham taking on Brighton at Craven Cottage in what looks like a great game from a neutral's perspective. You would imagine there will be a fair few goals in this one. However, history suggests that Brighton could struggle because Fulham have never, ever lost to them in the Premier League. They've won 3 of the last 4, including a 3-0 win at Craven Cottage last season, and they have 4 wins and 4 draws across all of their top-flight meetings since both sides got to the Premier League. And then finally at the Vitality, it's Bournemouth against Spurs. Bournemouth have won only 1 of their last 6 meetings against Tottenham. Spurs did the double over them last season. They won 3-1 in North London and 2-0 at the Vitality, with James Maddison and Dejan Kulusevski getting the goals on the South Coast last time out. So those are the games we have to look forward to on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and on Thursday. But who are the players you need to make it a successful game week. It is time for Waiver Wants.
The FPL Draft Zone, Waiver Wants.
So as usual, we're going to go through potential waiver pickups in fixture order, and that means we are starting with Ipswich against Crystal Palace. And the first thing to say here is that Ipswich are starting to show signs of a bit of defensive resilience, and with clean sheets hard to come by across the board, it might not be as insane as it sounds to invest in an Ipswich defensive asset this week. Crystal Palace are not prolific in front of goal, and that, my friends, is an understatement. Only Everton and Southampton have scored fewer goals than Palace this season, and in the last 4 game weeks, Ipswich have only conceded 1 goal in each of their last 4 games, all against much better teams than Crystal Palace. So I would not be surprised to see Ipswich winning this game and keeping a clean sheet. Obviously, Leif Davis would be the pick of their defensive assets if he is still available in your league, but if he isn't, any of O'Shea, Burgess or Twanzebe would do the job. Just be aware there is a doubt over Twanzebe's fitness, but Muric could be a good pickup as well if you're looking for a goalkeeper. If, however, you think Crystal Palace will get a result at Portman Road, and it's not impossible given they have scored more goals away from home than they have at Selhurst Park, Munoz is starting to show the sort of attacking intent that made him a very popular pick on draft night. He scored against Newcastle this weekend, but that has been coming. In 2 of his last 3 games prior to Saturday, he had an XGI of 0.39 against Wolves and 0.52 against Fulham. And against Newcastle, he finished with an XGI of 0.87. So his attacking numbers are through the roof right now. But just as a heads up, after this Ipswich game, it is Manchester City, Brighton and Arsenal in their next 3 for Palace. So it may well be a short-term pickup if you do decide to go there. Leicester are at home to West Ham at the King Power, and these are 2 teams that, frankly, look completely clueless right now. I am not hugely tempted by any of their assets from either of these teams, but if I had to, I would veer more towards Leicester than West Ham, purely because they're at home and they have a new manager to impress in the form of Ruud van Nistelrooy. As to who might do the damage to the East Londoners, Vardy is probably already taken. Buonanotte and Mavididi may not be, however, and in Van Nistelrooy's time in charge of Manchester United, he did seem to get the most out of the likes of Garnacho and Amad Diallo, so maybe Mavididi and Buonanotte will benefit from his appointments going forward. Perhaps Ruud is going to give them a winger masterclass. Everton take on Wolves at Goodison Park, looking to bounce back from that humiliation against Manchester United. Beto started that one and may get another run out here, and Branthwaite looked okay at Old Trafford before the team completely capitulated, but both Everton and Wolves have shown an absolutely comprehensive inability to defend this week, so attack could well be the best form of defence for both sides, in which case it's a question of which team has the most firepower, and I would go with Wolves in that regard. Cunha and Strand Larsen will be taken in most leagues, but beyond that it's a lucky dip really. Gomez and Bellegarde started against Bournemouth. Forbes and Hwang came on in the second half. It wouldn't surprise me if Gary O'Neill made some changes, and if he does, I imagine he will probably go with Hwang based on what he's done for him in the past. I'm not sure I would go there. I don't think I'd pick him up right now, but he could be a gamble that pays off if you are desperate. It's Manchester City against Nottingham Forest. City are not in a good place right now, and defensively they have been a shambles for most of the season, but if you think they may turn it around still, and it is not impossible that they will, maybe now is the time to get Ortega as your backup keeper. He started against Liverpool just days after Pep came up for his post-match interview with scratches all over his head and a gouge on his nose. He said he'd done it to himself. But there was speculation. Maybe he'd had a fight in the dressing room with one of his players, and the fact that Ederson was dropped from the Liverpool game, well, it just makes you think, doesn't it? I'm not saying it happened. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it just makes you think. So maybe Ortega is a bit of a no-lose signing if you can get him over the line, and if you think City will ever keep a clean sheet again. Ruben Diaz returned for City as well in that Liverpool game, so if he's free and you have faith in Pep turning it around, he will of course be a guaranteed starter going forward. Ake also played. It's a watch and wait for me with City though. Defensively, they have been all over the shop and there is no real sign of that changing anytime soon. As for their opponents, Nottingham Forest, Morgan Gibbs-White returned this week after injury. Jota Silva played again and got an assist for Chris Wood's goal against Ipswich. So if you think Forest can do more damage to City's hopes of a successful season, I would say either of those players could be decent waivers. Newcastle take on Liverpool at St James's Park. Liverpool have a very good record against Newcastle, as we said, and there are doubts over Alexander Isak's fitness, so it looks very likely there will be another 3 points incoming for Arne Slot's side. Joe Gomez is the obvious pickup here. Konate is out for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Gomez got the nod over Kwanzaa in the game against Manchester City. The news of the Konate injury came out just before Gameweek 13, so Gomez may well have been picked up by rival managers. But if not, get him in. Newcastle look blunt in attack, so there's every chance Liverpool will get another clean sheet in this one. And beyond that, their fixtures are good. They have an Everton in disarray next, and then it's Fulham, Spurs, Leicester and West Ham. So there are certainly a lot of potential defensive returns in amongst that lot. It's Southampton against Chelsea. Adam Armstrong has not been great in the top flight in the past, but he is in a good moment right now, and if he is available, he'd be a solid third striker option in 10-team leagues or larger. I still like the idea of Tall Paul Onuachu. He looked good in a cameo against Arsenal a few weeks ago at the Emirates. He looked good against Liverpool. He is a player that just missed out in Game Week 13 through injury, but it's not a serious injury. He has been prolific at every club he's ever played at, except for Southampton, but if he can nail down a starting spot in that Saints side, maybe he can return to the sort of goal-scoring form that made Southampton shell out for him in the first place. As for Chelsea, if Enzo wasn't picked up last week, he is now certainly showing that he's a worthwhile signing. Another return for him against Aston Villa this weekend, and any Chelsea defensive coverage would be good as well. Cucurella is the man of the moment right now. He was on course for bonus points and a clean sheet against Leicester last week before that late Jordan Ayew penalty threw a spanner in the works, but he did get an assist against Villa and he got 2 bonus points as well. So he would be a brilliant signing if you can get him. There's doubts as well over Fofana, so it's probably going to be Badiashile who will take that spot. But a word as well on Chelsea's goalkeeper, or more their backup goalkeeper, Philip Jorgensen, who was excellent in the Europa Conference in midweek. He made 11 saves. Enzo Maresca really bigged him up as well. And there have been question marks over Robert Sanchez all season long. Chelsea fans don't seem to be convinced by him. And I think that sooner rather than later, Jorgensen is going to end up as Chelsea's number one. Maybe one more Sanchez mistake could be all it takes to see that change happen. So if you want a route into Chelsea's backline and all of their first team starters are taken, it may well just be worth storing Jorgensen on the bench for a few weeks and hoping he gets his chance in the Premier League sooner rather than later, because Chelsea's fixtures are good and he would be a lovely route into that team. It's Arsenal against Manchester United at the Emirates. Amad Diallo, Rashford and Xerxes all put in strong performances in United's win over Everton. Luke Shaw and Harry Maguire came on for the last 35 minutes of that game as well. They'll be pushing for starts against Arsenal. Martinez is going to be absent, so if you want a route into that back line, you could roll the dice on either of them. I still like Lenny Yoro as an option as well. He'll be a starter sooner rather than later, but no one seems to know when he's going to be fit. As for Arsenal, Leo Trossard could be a waiver option in your league. He's not a guaranteed starter, which is why he would be on your waivers, but he always tends to deliver off the bench for Arsenal in limited minutes, and he was excellent against West Ham and excellent against Sporting Lisbon, so I would certainly roll the dice with him and just have him as your fifth midfielder, knowing he may not start, but even if he doesn't, you may still benefit from his presence in your team. And Zinchenko finally pitched in a decent cameo for Arsenal against the Hammers. And with so many games coming up, I do think there will be a rotation situation at that left-back spot. Calafiori has missed a few games already through injury, which is not new for him. He does suffer from little injury niggles, and Zinchenko could benefit from that over the next few weeks. I think he's probably the next man in line now over Mars Lewis-Skelly and over Kivior. I don't think he'll start against United, but it is Everton, Palace and Ipswich between game week 16 and 18, and I am very confident he will play at least one of those. It's Villa against Brentford, and Villa look clueless right now, and Brentford are scoring for fun. Sharda is the obvious pickup here if he's free, but it does feel a bit like after the Lord Mayor's show with him, I can't see him doing what he did this week. Next week, I would still prefer Igor Thiago in my squad going forward, and maybe this will be the game he starts, as the fixtures really begin to come thick and fast now, and squad rotation is going to have to happen across the board. Damsgaard got an assist against Leicester as his fine form continued. He could easily take advantage of what is a particularly leaky Aston Villa backline. As for Villa, it's goalkeepers again. There are a few goalkeeping options this week, and without Emi Martinez, Robin Olsen might get the nod for Villa. Martinez lasted only 45 minutes against Chelsea. Olsen is the backup keeper. He came on to replace him. If you want a slice of Villa defensive action, and I'm not saying you really should want that slice, but I'm just simply flagging it's an option to you, Olsen would be a nice route in, and he will be busy, I suspect, against Brentford. As for their attack, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the game where John Duran starts up front alongside Ollie Watkins. Unai Emery needs to find a way to win again. He may well need to change things up a bit, and Duran came on for the final 25 minutes against Chelsea alongside Watkins. So if he's free, he could be a good one-week punt as a third striker. At Craven Cottage, it's Fulham taking on Brighton. Alex Iwobi continued his fine form with another assist in the draw at Spurs. So if he's still not been picked up, make sure you get him before a rival does. He now has 3 goals and 4 assists in 13 games. So 7 returns in 13 games for Iwobi. Unheard of. But for me, Matt O'Reilly is the standout pick for Brighton, and maybe for the game week, certainly longer term. He earned his first league start for the club in that draw with Southampton on Friday. He played 71 minutes and he finished with an XGI of 0.45, which is impressive numbers. He also got an XGI of 0.53 in that win over Manchester City. And of course, this is a man who was absolutely outstanding in Scotland last year. Ended the season with 19 goals and 18 assists in all competitions. Brighton are a super attacking team. He has been bought to play an attacking role. They spent a lot of money on him, so I think he will play a lot more often than he doesn't. And their fixtures are good going forwards, with Leicester, Palace, West Ham and Brentford all to come after this Fulham game. So O'Reilly really is a strong pick for this week and long term, and he's certainly someone I've got my eye on. And then finally, it is Bournemouth against Spurs. You would expect goals in this one as well. Solanke was absent for Spurs in that draw with Fulham. The rumour was he missed the game with flu. Timo Werner did well though in his absence, got another assist. He's now got 2 assists in his last 2 league appearances, so he's in a good moment right now. As for Bournemouth, most managers will of course be eyeing up Justin Kluivert after his hat-trick this weekend, and with good reason, but Tavernier is still ticking along quite nicely. Thank you very much. A goal and 3 assists for him now after another assist this week, and with Ipswich and West Ham to come after Spurs, good fixtures for Bournemouth and a potentially good medium-term investment for your draft team. So those are some waiver picks for you to have a think about as we approach Game Week 14, and as always, just a reminder that we are looking for diamonds in the rough and not those top tier players, because we are making the wild assumption that the likes of Mo Salah and Bukayo Saka are already taken in your league. Right, that is it for this week. Game Week 14 starts on Tuesday, the 3rd of December, with a relegation 6-pointer between Ipswich and Crystal Palace. The deadline for your waivers is on Monday at 6 PM GMT. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the pod at this time of the year. The game weeks really do start happening very quickly indeed, back to back basically, so make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing, and please take 2 seconds of your time to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. All you have to do is click on the name of the show underneath the title of the episode that you're listening to, scroll down to the bottom until you see 5 empty stars, and then tap that 5th star. If you could do that for us, it would be hugely appreciated. And if you don't listen to us on Apple Podcasts, but you do listen to us on Spotify or any other podcast platform, just give us a nice review, some kind words, that'd be lovely too. A reminder, we are on X, we are on Instagram, we are on Blue Sky. Our handle on X and Instagram is at FPL Draft Zone. Our handle on Blue Sky is at FPLDraftZone.bsky.social. But that is it for this week. I hope Game Week 13 was full of sunshine and rainbows, and I hope Game Week 14 brings you more success in the waivers, more success in free agency, and of course, ultimately, more success in your draft league. Until next time, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.